Hey everyone, welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. It is your girl Vanessa, and I am thrilled. This has been a dream of mine to have Nigel Paine on our podcast. We are going to be talking all about the future of work, leadership, learning, and he is just such a great inspiration to me and has been such a champion and support as I transitioned into this role. I was just so thrilled that he said yes. So for those of you that don't know Nigel, he is a globally recognized leader in learning and organizational development with a career that spans, listen to this, academia, media, consulting, and leadership at some of the world's most respected organizations, including the BBC. No small organization there. Nigel's work has consistently focused on helping organizations and leaders unlock their full potential. And today we're diving into his latest book, The Great Reset. It's a powerful call to rethink how organizations operate, lead, and support their people in a rapidly changing world. And so with that, Nigel, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Vanessa, it's an absolute pleasure to see you again, and I'm very pleased to be here.
So can we start off with a little bit more about your background and your journey and how you got to where you are today?
I'm happy to do that. I'm not sure that where I am today is such an amazing achievement. I've kind of crawled and ducked and weaved my way through my career without any particular great master plan behind it. But I've always been involved in two things that have defined my life. The first is technology. I was I'm very old, Vanessa, and I remember the beginnings of computer-based learning. I remember the launch of personal computing, and I just had this perception that the world was going to shift. A lot of people said, "Oh, it's too expensive, it's too slow," blah, blah, blah. But I thought, no, I think something massive is going on. And I did spend a lot of years of my career saying, I know it's not very impressive now, but just wait a few years. And everyone looked very cynically and said, oh, yes, but I was right. You know, I remember the very first postage stamp movies on computer screens. And everyone said, oh, who wants a postage stamp? And I said, one day it'll be full screen. And they said, no, it won't. And sure enough, it did. So technology was a huge influence on my life because I saw it as game changing, really. You know, being able to get more stuff to more people more quickly and become a kind of external brain for us. And then the second thing was to get involved in largely, almost exclusively adult learning, trying to help adults remake their lives through learning. And I did that in a variety of ways. From the very early days of my career, I worked in communities trying to empower communities to take charge of their own destinies. So I did a lot of work facilitating chairman, secretary, note taker, being a participant in communities and committees and helping people with the basic skills to manage groups and communities. And that changed people's lives. I remember about 5 years after my last contact, I bumped into someone in middle of town, and the person said, you realize now I'm a city councillor. I'm now chairman of the housing committee or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And he said, it all started, I would never have done this without you. So those kinds of insights really made a difference to me. I realized that you can change your life through learning. And that includes work. You know, nothing is a dead end if you want to change your life. Or everything is a dead end if you don't. So I spent a lot of time working in some ways bigger and bigger organizations, from small groups, small organizations. I was chief executive of a media group, so we made software and interactive materials, and that, you know, we had 150 staff, so small, but we were the first company in the UK to sell to bundle software for Apple with Apple. Wow. Which was an amazing experience. It meant that I think they sold 27,000 copies of a piece of software that we'd normally sold in hundreds. That was absolutely amazing, and very little money from Apple. And when we said, "What about paying a little bit more, Apple?" and they said, "Hey, we're giving you the mailing list." That's what you get from being bundled with Apple. And I had to say, fair enough.
There could be gold in that mailing list.
Exactly. It can be golden. It can be golden. So that was where we started. I was in a small company, and then I left that and I started working in bigger and bigger organizations. And in the BBC, I had a staff of 535 people and a big budget. And I ran learning and development across the world. And that was an enormous challenge because BBC was going through massive change at the time, both cultural change and technology change, because we had to get the BBC digital from analog, that all media organizations had to make that leap. And it wasn't easy. There were lots of issues, union issues, for example, and just this idea that you went from someone doing things for you to you doing it for yourself. And in some ways, that summed up the IT revolution. Once upon a time, there was someone who took your notes, typed your letters, put them in envelopes, posted them for you. And then now we just do email and we do it ourselves. And it was exactly the same with media, from filming an interview with a camera person, a sound person, a production person, a driver. You had a big group in a big estate wagon in order to be able to do that. To having a laptop and a camera and told to go do it yourself and edit it yourself. Go to a Starbucks and edit, and then send the final product back to the studio and back to base. So that was a big transformation. But I always argued with people who are saying, I need to have this, and this is empowering because you're doing it for yourselves. You're taking control of your own life. And if I sum up my career, if I do it at a very high general level, that general level is helping people take charge of their own destinies, which I think is very, very important and very empowering.
I love that.
So that's it, really. That's a sum up of 25 years or something like that.
And not that we're in the middle of our own technological revolution at this exact moment.
Absolutely. Going through it again. And I find it equally as fascinating and exciting. I was just talking to someone this morning and saying, isn't this an amazing world we're living in? Because we have no clear idea of what it will be like in 2 years.
No.
And that was like that at the beginning of personal IT. We had no idea what it would be like in 2 years. And I think where we are at the moment is like a whole new world is opening for us. And it's going to impact us as individuals, as workers, as communities, as governments. There is no end to the change. And I think it's exciting. And I think in my philosophy, if you keep people at the center of it, then it's going to be fine. We're going to do well, and it will allow us to do things that we couldn't do otherwise. It's like when I started to use a personal computer, firstly a desktop, and then I was early into laptops. My laptop became really important. Now, when I look at it, I couldn't live without. It's not just important to me. I couldn't live without my laptop. It is my external brain. It is the way that I do everything. And I don't go anywhere without my laptop, nor my iPad, nor my iPhone. But they're really, really, and I think it's going to be the same with AI. You will not leave the house without your AI companion sitting on your shoulder somewhere and guiding you through the world, preparing you. We do a bit of it now, but I think we haven't seen anything yet. I was talking to someone saying, I actually have quite interesting discussions with AI. I say, I'm thinking about this, and they come back and say something. And I said, what about that bit of it? And they said, well, yes, that's true, but have you thought about this bit of it? I actually have really rich, formal, structured discussions with AI, and I'm the richer for it. I find it, and in some ways, I wouldn't know how to set out now without getting a perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like it's changed my workflows and how I do certain things. And yes. I will say to the team all the time, as when I'm on my role, I'm like, how did I live without AI? It speeds it up. Now, it is hard to imagine. Yeah. So and it feels like a friend. Hard to imagine. Yeah. You build this relationship with the AI.
Yeah.
And, you talk to it and it provides you feedback, and it's a way to journal. Like, I think sometimes for some folks, journaling is hard because you're not really having a prompt. It's not really a conversation, but having a conversation, having to think out your thoughts, kind of like therapy, right? Is much easier. So it's a way to be able to journal kind of what's happening, what you're doing, and what's going on, and process some of it. And you don't have to pay for therapy.
Yeah, it's true. I was standing on a station in Belgium, and this guy came up to me and said in French, do you know where the train to so-and-so, where does it go from, which platform? And I said, I guess it'd be platform 4, but I don't know. Yeah. And he just got out his phone, and instead of going to the railway app or whatever, he just opened up ChatGPT and said, I want to go to somewhere. I'm on this station. Which platform does it go from, and when's the next train? Came straight back to him. And he went, oh, yeah, it's platform 2. Thank you very much. And off he went to platform 2. And I thought, this is a world that is changing in front of my eyes. Mm-hmm. But your first port of call is not Google. It's not it's not the trainer. It's ChatGPT.
It's exactly.
It gives you the answer faster than anything else.
Yeah, it's exactly why Google has been, utilized, really diving into Gemini and their AI overviews and things like that. It's something that we do need to recognize, that this is how people are going to be searching, and we need to be looking at this now as opposed to later on as an industry as well. I think that traditionally we wait to, let's see how things play out. No, we need to be creating our AI chatbots and things like that to support our employees in work, starting to develop them now, because they're just going to get better and better over time. But eventually it's going to become an expectation of, this is how I search. It's not going to be through Google.
And your job and my job is to help people get the best out of that. And I spend a lot of time encouraging people, just play, just experiment. Don't be afraid, just do it. And people say, oh, what happens if all my data is given to some, I don't know who? And I say, what's the worst that could happen if you ask it to find a source for you, or to some idea? It's what's the worst that can happen?
Truly.
So it's about plunging in.
You just have to try. Right. You just have to go little by little, just try. And you can do something so simple, ask it what you should make, give it the list of ingredients that you have in your refrigerator or your pantry, and ask it to give you a recipe for dinner tonight. Yeah. Just to try. It doesn't even have to be, top secret confidential information.
That is not going to destroy the world if it gets out.
No, it might just show you how little I have in my pantry.
That's the possibility. It reveals something about you which you don't want anyone to know. But basically, yes, you're right. Start safe. You don't have to download or upload all the new confidential strategy documents from your company. No. There's plenty of ways that it can help in that way. And I find it increasingly useful for research. If I'm exploring a domain, I first of all ask an AI tool to scope it for me, point me in the right direction, and also just to put my own thoughts together and say, look, what have I missed? Mm-hmm. I find that really useful, really useful.
I did that when I was writing the book. It helped me, I put some of the things that I like, the table of contents, and I'm like, here's what I'm trying to get out of this book. What have I missed? Yeah. That, am I leaning too heavily in learning? So the new book is going to be a lot about using the model as an organizational driver, not just a driver in learning. And ChatGPT was like, you're leaning very heavy in areas of people and learning when it comes to the topics that you're talking about. Might want to consider, here's like a list of topics of some other areas that you want to explore to really show that versatility, right? So it helped me get out of my own brain and my own bias.
Exactly.
To give you that perspective.
Exactly. It's like having a critical friend. Mm-hmm. Someone who will say, Vanessa, think about this. Have you thought about this area? Yeah, that's extraordinarily helpful. And I don't know any other way you could get that without having a critical friend with you all the time, which is possible, but very expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah. AI is incredibly cheap for what you get from it, I think.
Absolutely. Did you use any AI to write The Great Reset?
Yeah, I did. All of the chapter summaries come out of the first draft was AI. And what I found was that this is embarrassing in some ways, that the summary that was produced by AI was better than my own efforts in the first draft, because I missed stuff. It didn't miss anything. Then obviously I would shape it, scope it, make it make it my own voice. But yes, it really helped. And also asking questions. I'd say things like, what questions should I be asking about this part of the book? And it would throw up a whole bunch of very interesting questions that the chapter kind of posed for people.
Yeah.
So yes, I am, and I'm starting work already on the second edition. The second edition will have a new chapter on. So how do you put this into practice? People have asked for that, and I think I should do that, definitely. And I'm going to use AI to scope that domain for me. So again, what sort of questions will people ask, and how do I begin to formulate that into processes, tools, ideas for people to use? So yes, I did. Although I have to say that I was halfway through the book before there was any Gen AI around. So that's amazing. It just hit me right in the middle of the book. And I thought at the time, do I just give up now? Do I have to go back and start again? And then I thought, no, I just need to incorporate it. There's a chapter on AI in it. And I just thought, well, if it's a tool, I should be using that tool. And I did. So yes, it was extraordinary how the front half and the back half of the book were different processes because AI intervened in the middle.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I love that. So I want to dive a little bit into the Great Reset because I found it a great read and inspirational for me. What inspired you to write it? Was your work at, various organizations, or was it some of your consulting work, seeing what's happening now?
Yeah, it's very much the latter. It's about, I work with lots of different organizations, and I get insights from them, and I get frustrations from them. And if you go back, 10 years, and I wrote the first book called The Learning Challenge, was really about how you could run a really efficient learning operation. So it was very much inward looking, how you improve this and how you improve that, and how this you could extend this and extend that. The second book became a sort of obsession about why leadership development so often fails, i.e. nothing happens. It can be very nice, but nothing happens. Yep. So I tried to dive in and see what are the conditions that make leadership development successful or not successful. And what I found was it's got nothing to do with the quality of the course. It's to do with the organization, the way it's taken seriously, the context, if you like, the standards that the organization applies to the outcomes from the programs. Anyway, I did all that. The third one, I jumped into learning culture because I thought that was very important and emergingly important. And I wanted to explore what the conditions for learning culture was. Then I come out of learning culture and think, hey, what about the whole organization? How do we structure an organization? How do we think about the nature of an organization? So that was the genesis of the book. So I realized that if we can connect people, if we can share ideas and problems, then the organization can pivot. It means it makes the organization so much more agile and adaptable and able to cope with the new world. And I saw this new world coming rushing at us. And the focus on individual competence, individual KPI, individual performance, and nothing on teamwork, team performance, sharing across the organization, lateral connection across the organization. So I thought that there's something really badly missing. And I went back to 2000, back 20 years, and I realized that had been a big thing 20 years ago, and we kind of forgot it. And what I'm trying to do is remember it again, but in a different context. That if you read the book on organizational learning that Algiers, I always get his name wrong, Algiers wrote from Harvard, he doesn't ever mention, he just says technology is in the background there. I'm saying technology is at the forefront. It's not in the background. It's a different world, and AI is here. So you have to take account of those. So it was really trying to help organizations pivot, not just individuals or not just L&D pivot. So I think L&D has got a role to play, but so has talent, so has operations, so has marketing, so the whole organization. So I've gone from small to big and bigger. And I thought, in my naive way, I just think this is the book for now. This is the book people need. if they're going to cope with so much change, so many things going on.
So much change, happening, overnight. Was it Duolingo's CEO that just came out that said that he was going to be replacing, I think it was contractors with AI, right? We're not too far off when someone's going to say, oh, I'm thinking about replacing employees with AI. Actually, it's how AI is some products are selling itself. So I have 12 quote unquote AI employees, right, that do different things, copy editing, marketing, and things like that. But they're branding themselves as employees for my organization. And so we're not too far off from seeing that. And so you're right. I think the organization, there's so much change happening that if we just worry about ourselves changing, great if we change, but if we're still in a dirty fishbowl, but we're clean fish, we're just going to get dirty again, right? It's never going to actually 100%.
Change. I think that's the next stage of AI. If you like, we've kind of done okay with personal AI, that just like you and I, it's on your phone, we use it, it helps us in day-to-day life. The big thing is when we bring it into the workflow and it impacts the workflow in a much more holistic way. And that is another huge game changer. And you're right. There are programs now which help you onboard your AI member of staff. Yeah. And what you have to think about, the kinds of things you need to do in order to onboard that person. And organizations are doing that. My gripe would be when you say it replaces. I think it complements, it adds to. So it empowers the organization to do a lot more rather than detracts from what it used to be able to do with people. But yes, in some ways, if I'd rather talk to an efficient AI bot than I would an inefficient human being. Yeah. It's like someone was saying, but would you ever accept grading by an AI bot? If you were doing my doctorate, for example, would I want a bot to comment on a chapter? My answer is absolutely I would. Because your supervisor will take 3 weeks, your bot will take 3 minutes. Yeah. So in the time that the supervisor comes back, you can do 3 drafts. And it's only when you're absolutely finished and think this is great, you can send it to the supervisor. So yes, I think
1,000%.
Those kinds of things.
We're actually really building that at Kirkpatrick. So one of the things we have for our certification programs, we have capstone assignments. And so for our basic certification, like our entry level one, the bronze program, you have to submit a blended evaluation plan. I hire people to actually sit down and grade them, and it takes them a lot of time. And so it's like, we've got to be able to use AI in a way that we can do this. And so we're building this tool to help grade, and it's taking like a bit of training and things like that, but it's getting really close and a lot better, and something that we hope to then turn over to folks that are going through the program and say, before you send it to the team to do the final review, put it through the tool and use that as your feedback back and forth, because it does take them 3 weeks to turn around your feedback. And, people want, they went through the program, they're excited, they want their certification and things like that. This is a way to be able to cut that time in half, and you become more responsible for your learning at that point, because you can make those edits.
You're actually you're offering to people that this will help you take charge of your own learning destiny. And I think that's really good. You don't require an external person until the very end. It's actually a dialogue. You end up with the dialogic process where you're trying, you get response, you try again, you get response, you try again. And that to me is a more effective way of learning than thinking you've done it finally. You submit it, it's thrown back at you. You have to go through the whole process again. You submit it, it's thrown back at you. That's not dialogic. That's summative. It's really making formative assessment come alive. It essentially is. And I don't understand anybody who wouldn't want that. Now, I do doctoral supervision. I mark doctoral assignments. I know what that's like. It's slow and it's hard to have a lot of that burden taken away and to have the papers come in finally at a much higher level of completion because it's been through that process. Bring it on. I think learners will really relish that. It's fantastic. And it's private. You can make as many mistakes as you like without anyone saying poor, fail, or grade C.
Remember back in school, the red pen from your teacher?
Yes, exactly. Scary. Yeah. really depressing. You opened it up and whereas you can make as many mistakes as you like with an AI tool, and it's never going to criticize you. It's just going to help you.
Well, and then it allows you as the professor, or as the facilitator, to spend more time doing community things and coaching and having real conversations that are actually going to lead to impact, as opposed to just grading a piece of paper.
100%. 100% agree with you. So I don't understand where people think this is a terrible outcome. I think it's a very positive outcome, and I bet you students will love it. Because if I could get feedback in 3 minutes rather than 3 weeks, whoa, that's a result.
Well, we live in a world where everything, is instantaneous for us. And that's, it's an expectation. It's not a nice to have anymore. Personalization and, he's like instant gratification or just instant feedback is what we expect. You post something on social media, you get your instant feedback. You open up your Instacart, you've got your recommendations there, and you're, able to order your groceries and get them delivered within 2 hours, right? This is an expectation, and we need to be meeting that. And it's always strange to me that we blame, not blame is the right word, but we talk down to the people around us saying, why do they need this instant gratification? This is so bad. This is that. This is the world in which they live in. This is the expectation. And it's not all bad. Everything has positive and negative. And if we're only going to focus on the negative, then we're never going to move forward. But there's ways to take things, people will talk to me, I've been on your podcast talking about TikTok, and people will say things to me about social media and how horrible it is. And it's like, well, if you're only going to take social media for the bad, then yes, it's horrible. But if we actually take the good and we learn from it, there's a lot of things that we can be doing better. And when we elevate and we look, but outside of learning and what the business is paying attention to, you can become more of a business partner, because now you're speaking their language. You're seeing what you're seeing what they're seeing. You're consuming the same things that they're consuming. And now you can tie it back, but relate it back to learning.
100%. TikTok is a great learning medium. If you know where to look, it's about being selective and making your choices. It's like when they invented steam printing in the early 19th century, and what happened was a deluge of garbage started to come out onto the market. Pot boilers, thrillers, crime stories. And the intelligentsia, the elite, were horrified and said, this is all rubbish, and we've got to stop this. We can't have all this stuff polluting people's minds. But what happened was that the vast majority of people learned to discriminate and realize that that's rubbish. This is really valuable. And the same with TikTok. There is a lot of stuff that bores the hell out of me. I don't want to look at cat videos all my life. But if you go beyond that and you see it as a distribution medium, it just has amazing stuff. You just need to look. Just like there are amazing books that, human knowledge is in books. Just because there are garbage books and cheap and nasty books doesn't mean we say, right, let's abolish books.
Throw the entire medium.
Be ludicrous.
I actually had someone say that to me. They're like, well, but my TikTok is only, dancing girls in bikinis and dog videos. And I was like, well, you probably need to stop watching that. And you just outed yourself of what you like, because you can train. That's another thing that I think that we're slow on the uptake on, is the algorithm. Their algorithm is incredible because it doesn't take the social graph. It takes an interest graph, and it feeds you things that are related that you wouldn't even think to search for. And that's what we need out of our learning systems. I don't care that my colleague liked Accounting 101. I'm not a math person, right? That's great that they liked it. What I want to know is, for me, what should my next step be? Yes,
that's exactly right. What should your next step be, and what works for me in my context? And yes, if you start to engage as opposed to superficially scan the surface. Now, yes, if you scan the surface, you get nothing but superficial rubbish. If you start to engage, you'll find some depth in there. So it's like all contemporary technology. There are some really horrible things going on, but there are also some really life-enhancing good things going on, and it's getting beyond the knee-jerk reaction. Just as I said, just as we went through popular press, went through magazines, the development of magazines, and all of these things that were condemned in their time as being superficial and corrupting young people's minds. And we accommodated it. And I think we will accommodate this eventually, more quickly, actually, much quicker than we would with other media, because we're more attuned to that. And we need to.
So you're very much an early adopter, and you're open to that. Is there a moment where you realized have you always been this way, or was there something, an experience that showed you the opportunity and made you more apt to be an early adopter?
I was always curious. When I was a child, I used to get beaten. I shouldn't really say this, but I used to get beaten by my father because I would take things apart and I couldn't always put them back together again. I nearly did. I could always nearly do it.
So one little piece.
He saw that as a terrible thing. Right. Now I think of it as really good that I was so curious and interested. But the thing, I suppose that the moment was really when the iPhone first came out in 2007. I flew to America to buy one because I thought there's something in this device. So because it was available in the UK, but you had to buy a contract and it was really expensive. So I flew to the US. I got a neutral iPhone so I could put my own SIM card in it. And I just began to explore their very limited, teeny ecosystem at the time. And I just thought there's something here that is extraordinary. And that really made me realize that getting in early was a really good idea. So I was into the iPhone 1, and I've had, goodness knows how many I've had since then. But it's just changed. It does change people's lives. You see the behavior. I sit on buses and trains watching everybody with their phone doing some things trivial, stupid, and waste of time. Other things deep, profound, and very useful. I see people reading books on their phone. I see people engaging with others on their phone. So yes, it was that triple. When it was launched, Jobs said, he said, it's a music machine, it's a telephone, it's a computer. And he said, we're launching 3 devices: a telephone, a music machine, and a computer. And as he said it began to spin, and then it started to spin really, really fast. Then boom, out popped the iPhone. And it's true, the iPhone was the first phone that wasn't really a phone. It actually wasn't a very good phone, or it wasn't the world's best phone. But the other things were what was important. It was a media device. Yeah. And no other phone company at that time saw the phone as anything but a phone. And then all the other things were peripheral, whereas it was an amazing communications device from the beginning. So yeah, that really did make me much more willing to jump in and try things out and try to learn what was going on.
For organizations, they're dealing with lots of change now. Not everyone has the openness that you and I may have to trying new things or seeing things differently, and they have fatigue. What do you say to organizations to help folks manage some of maybe that anxiety or that fatigue that they have?
Well, I use that simple expression, what's the worst that could happen? And sometimes when organizations say, well, if this happened and that happened, that's the end of the company. And we say, right, okay, well, we have to manage that. So I try to help organizations be realistic, but there is a lot of paranoia, and the tendency is to over-control, over-limit. And for example, when AI came out, I used to, I don't do it anymore. I used to say in the audience, how many of you have used AI? Virtually everyone put their hand up. And then I'd say, how many of you have got permission to use AI in your organization? About 3/4 put their hand down. And I said, how many of you still continue to use AI despite not having permission from your organization? And we're not recording this. About half, 3/4 of the people put their hand back up. So, what I try to say to organizations, if you mandate control, you don't control. Right. It's the opposite. You actually allow bad things to happen. Because people used to tell me, saying things like, oh, I'm not allowed to use AI to produce a synopsis of our strategy. So I just take it home and upload it and then ask AI to summarize it for me and then produce the summary. And they say, oh, this is brilliant. Well done. and you think, oh my goodness, they're uploading in an uncontrolled way anything that comes out of the company because it makes their life easier. Far better for the organization to control that and manage it and agree that this is really important than say blanket no, because people are not like that. You say blanket no, they go, well, I'll work out a way. Not because they're being naughty or mischievous. They're doing it because it's helping their life. It's helping them do their job. It's helping them be productive. So I helped a lot of organizations in the early stages think through how you could create limited access and manage the process and manage the security. And then now with all these secure AIs that focus on the internal data and don't allow it to disappear out of the organization and combine it with external data. You see, that this has all been dealt with now. It's all solved. But at the time, it used to worry me that as soon as you stood there like a policeman and said no, people just said, "Oh, really? Thank you very much. I'll find my own way through." And they did.
They always.
And they did. There's nothing more imaginative than people. People solve all problems in all ways. That's the nature of the human being.
It's so true. It's so true. There's just, we think that we're locking things down, but in the fact it's like telling a kid no, right? You can't do that. It makes them want to do it even more and figure out a way, whether or not it's always right or wrong. Well, obviously, it's the Kirkpatrick podcast, so I have to ask you, what's been your experience with the Kirkpatrick model, and how do you see evaluation moving into this new world as you share?
It's a really good question. It's a very interesting question. Obviously, I've used the Kirkpatrick model for decades, and it was. I remember the very first time I came across it when I was in a corporate context and thinking, whoa, this is magical. I didn't realize things like this existed. And finding it a very useful conceptualization of thinking about learning. Now it's more complicated. There are different approaches, different things. And I think, Kirkpatrick, what you're doing is fantastic. You're bringing the model into a new world and making it far more accessible and putting in things like AI to make it more valuable. I find it extraordinary that people still don't measure impact at all. Yeah. Or they think that likes or I found this helpful is a good evaluation model. I think what Kirkpatrick teaches you is there's actually a journey, and the final journey is, what is the actual tangible value to this organization? What can you do now you couldn't do before? What has changed and for what reason? And how can we make more of that? And how can we make fewer mistakes in doing it again? So all of that stuff is very, very helpful. And without good old Donald Kirkpatrick, thinking it through in 1960s,
1954.
1964. Whoa. Thinking it through in 1964, and I read his doctoral thesis, from which it emerged. Very, very interesting. The early thinking about, well, how do we know what matters? How do we know what works? How do we know what's important? And just formulating and structuring that. So it's been with me for decades.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about. There is so much opportunity for it right now, though, that I don't think that the opportunity was as in your face before. But now with all of these tools being able to do some of those measurements, or at least help you think about it differently, or helps set some of it up. Sometimes it's just looking at that blank page and not knowing what you should even be measuring, and having a tool to help you think through that is all you need to get started and get moving.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's that process of starting very early on to think about what you're trying to do, and to try and articulate that in terms that can be measured, and getting that signed off by the organization, rather than at the end when you've finished, you say, oh, I better do some evaluation. That's always hopeless.
Yeah,
and increasingly hopeless.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right. I agree with you, Vanessa.
Well, Nigel Paine agrees with me. Seal of approval.
I do agree with you.
So what's next for you? So you said you're writing the second edition of The Great Reset.
Yeah.
What else are you working on? Any secrets you can share with us?
Well, I want to get The Great Reset out there, and in order to do that, I'm not only doing a second edition, but I'm starting to prepare a number of tools that will be available to people who've read the book, found it helpful, but want to go further. Yeah. So I'm working on those, and I'm working out how I can distribute those, whether I just give them away from my website or I have something a bit more structured. I'm doing 3 or 4 programs, full day programs on implement the ideas in the book. So that's the big thing for me. It's not just to say, well, the book's finished, that's it. Yeah. But to say the book's finished, that's the starting point of a different kind of journey. So I think this journey's got a way to run at the moment. I've got through first base, maybe I got through second base, but I'm not at the destination yet. So I hope that within a year, I've got something quite valuable for people, and that they will be continuing to use it, continuing to find the book helpful, and helping build that world that you talked about at the beginning, build that changing world where organizations are so much more agile and responsive and able to turn on a dime, because that's going to be very, very necessary, I think, in the next 5 years. My goodness, just look out. How is the world changing? How do we respond to all of that? And if we've not got that sharing of learning, that organizational brain purring away, that we rely on individuals and individual talent, we're going to miss so many tricks, and it will slow us down so much. So I'm a kind of person with a mission at the moment. I feel I have something to contribute. I may be utterly deluded, Vanessa. No. I may be utterly deluded, but I like to think that I've got something to offer which is really important and will help organizations, not just create more baggage,
more work,
more bureaucracy,
more fluff.
Actually help them become something different. That's why it's called The Great Reset.
It sounds like a really good compliment, actually, to the next book. Really, like thinking about how do we move forward, and doing that reset, measuring what matters, so that we're doing more of what works, less of what doesn't, and helping to manage. What's your timeline? The
timeline, well, I'm in Australia in July and August, so I'm going to rewrite the book for the second edition. That will come out on the anniversary of the first edition in September. So it'll be second edition on the day we publish the first edition. And the rest of the stuff I'll put out in dribs and drabs. So nice. I've got some things in half done. I'll have those done. And I hope that I can respond to demand. I hope people will say, that was really useful, but what I really would like, and I'll listen to that and try to do my best. And also, as I work with organizations and we try to implement things, and I think, oh, there's a gap there. There's a little bridge that I've got to build. I'll go away and build the bridge. Because once you've got it in your head that the book is a starting point, not a finishing point. And that's when you finish a book, Vanessa, as you just have, it's so tempting to go, done it. It's finished. But it's not. It's actually the beginning of a dialogue and a commitment. And I have really interesting conversations with my readers, and I really value that as well. So I'm going to be not just having good conversations, but having action-oriented conversations to do stuff slightly differently and to help modify my thinking. If people say, well, that didn't work, I'll go back and say, well, why didn't it work? Let's explore that. And maybe they're right. Maybe it just means a minor adjustment. So it's a journey, really. I'd see this as maybe a 2 or 3 year journey going ahead. Oh, yeah. And then I'll write another book, but not at the moment.
I love it.
I just want to get this one working.
And I think you're doing the right thing, is thinking about what are the tools to actually implement, right? Yes. Where I think a lot of books will stop is the book's done. It's there.
Yeah. Exactly.
But being able to provide them with the tools to implement is going to be incredible. Awesome.
Correct.
Well, Nigel,
spot on.
Thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners find you?
They can find me. The easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Nigel Paine, there's only one of me, I think, as far as I know. I've always come up first. And on my website, which is nigelpaine.com, you can find me easily there. You can get on my mailing list, so I will keep you informed. You can download resources as they are developed. So it's the beginning of a continuing relationship if you're interested. And the book is published by the LDA Press in the US. So it came out in the US, came out in New York. So you can easily get access to the book if you wanted to buy either the EPUB, the electronic version, or the print version. It's available freely, I hope, and easily.
Yes, I have the e-version. It was a very easy download and saved to my phone.
Exactly. And it's also on Amazon if you want to get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's around the world on Amazon. So but I hope that people find it helpful and useful and use it. That's what I want. I want it used.
I'm sure that they will. Nigel, thank you so much again for being here. I appreciate always your support. And I know this will not be the last of our conversations. And I'll talk to you very soon.
I sincerely hope so, Vanessa. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Bye, y'all.